Welcome to the 12 Stones podcast. This is Gretchen Garrity, and I'm here with
Deborah Spindle.
And our guest today is Cindy Dickens, who has a great story.
Yep, Cindy, we've kind of met you and seen you around in various library board meetings, and we've kind of been soldiering on in Facebook comments and kind of crossed paths a few times. So do you want to just tell us about how you got involved or about your background?
Yeah. Well, let me first start by saying thank you for inviting me on today. I'm very humbled to be here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You're humbled that you're here.
Yeah, that's
all right. Go on.
All right. So I jumped in this fight a couple of years ago. Just real briefly, it started back actually when my kid was in, back at John Thomas, actually.
Where's that?
That's a school.
I know, but where?
It's in Nixa.
Okay.
And we had some issues back there with their social emotional learning program, where they decided it was appropriate to discuss suicide at that level. Probably should start off by telling you, they do this program every year for fifth graders. However,
that's about age 10, 11.
12.
Right?
Yeah, 11 or 12.
But my daughter skipped a grade. So in all actuality, my kid probably shouldn't have been in there. So we're talking if she was technically a fourth grader, but in a fifth grade.
Academic.
Yeah. So I knew they sent the information out. However, they didn't send out the questionnaire. So there was a questionnaire at the end, sent my very well-rounded daughter into a frenzy. She was a straight A student involved in sports, in Taekwondo. She's a black belt in Taekwondo. Just this survey was incredibly inappropriate. So that's how we kind of got started. I went to the school about it.
And how did they react?
It was interesting. They called me at first, and then I get this voicemail. I call them back. They're like, "Oh no, she's fine." And I was like, "No, I'm going to make that decision because you know what? I'm still the mom." And so, I ended up taking her home. She was very distraught. It wasn't until I got her home that I got the survey in my hand. And it sent me into an absolute rage.
So I'm misunderstanding. They do a program every year, and SEL is social emotional learning.
Correct.
Right. And that is it's a delivery system of Marxist indoctrination, but
Correct.
we won't go deeply into that at the moment.
Yeah.
So, and they have a survey. It's a mental health survey. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, so the program is called the SOS program, and it's called Signs of Suicide.
Signs of suicide or science of suicide?
Signs of suicide.
Okay.
Okay.
So
For
there's
fifth graders.
For fifth graders, so that if your friends are suicidal, you can see why my fourth grade student needed to know that. Any fifth grade student. So it's Signs of Suicide, the SOS program. Okay. So they teach them all these things, and it's, just so that they can learn about it and what's the right thing to do and how you handle situations and like if you were to tell me you were going to kill yourself, how should they respond to that, which is awful. Why would you tell a child that anyway?
Why would you put on a child, our child should go to another adult and say,
right.
But go on.
Yeah. So then at the end of this, they do a survey. I don't even know if I kept it. I think I was so angry I just pitched it. But the survey just asked them the very first part of the survey, I was already irritated because it said male, female, transgender. And I was like, my fifth grader? Like, why?
They were asking if you were transgender?
Yeah, in the fifth grade.
What year was this?
So JJ's 2009, she was born. So 14. Would have been right after, when was COVID?
2020.
So 2019.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were
Is it still in the school?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mia had that survey. Yeah. I've never asked her.
So then I'd ask a bunch of just very general questions, right? But my daughter's a very literal person. So I'd ask them things like, have you ever thought about what it would, like the one that really got to me was, have you ever thought about what it would be like if you weren't here? Well, even though they went through the program, my daughter's not thinking about killing herself.
Right.
She's just thinking, I'm a Christian and I can't wait to get to heaven. That's exactly what she told me. when
Yeah.
I was like, why did you answer it this way?
Yeah.
And she's like, because I have thought about that.
Yeah.
I get to go see Jesus. And I was like, dang, okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But there was no follow-up to that. They were just answer it. And then at the end of this, you score it. And then
she
based on
scored-
the score,
yeah.
that she was suicidal and needed counseling immediately.
Whoa.
And my daughter,
I mean, how
believed
in the
that.
world can a survey make a determination like that?
Yeah. And so you're what I come to find out later is this was a high school survey. So if high schoolers would have read a question, have you ever thought about what it would be like if you weren't here?
They'd understand.
They would understand that it was still in reference to the suicide program.
Yeah.
My daughter didn't make that connection. She just answered it
Yeah.
like a
Right, of
kid
course,
would
because,
answer.
well, that's actually, she's a thoughtful child, because a thoughtful person would actually think, yeah, there's death in the world. There's, and we go to heaven.
Right. So I had to explain to her that this did not determine.
So did they tell her that she was suicidal?
Yes.
They told her before you got. Whoa.
Yeah.
So of course that would upset any kid, because here's an authority figure telling you you're suicidal. That'd be
And we had
scary.
recently been touched by suicide. My family had. So that was very fresh. So when they did that survey and
Even
told
more
her, it was
upsetting.
even more upsetting.
It
for
rocked her world.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. And my husband and we were livid. And so we went, I went straight past the school and I went to the superintendent.
Good for you.
And got a call back from Dr. Kopp and not the superintendent, which I kind of expected. I explained
who's Dr.
to him
Kopp?
I can't remember they've got so many people at that administration building with so many different titles. I don't remember what his title was, but he was over the secondary education.
Okay.
So that's why he called me back.
Okay. Yeah,
He was going to look into it and get back with me. He never did. I told him my concern was the transgender thing at the beginning. Kind of looked off these questions to him, and he did tell me right offhand that survey it's intended for high school students. And I was like, you're giving this to fifth graders. My kid's not even really supposed to be in fifth grade, and you're giving it to her. She's a very literal child. Like, you can't give a blanket survey and not tell. He said, well, you got the information. I said, I promise you I didn't receive that survey, because if I did, would never have let my daughter do that program.
Probably, as would 90% of parents, if they saw the questions, would not allow their children to take it.
So I was already pretty irritated. And then fast forward to 7th grade, she brings home 13 Reasons Why from the junior high.
Now, explain that book.
So that book is it is 13 Reasons Why. The main character in this book, the whole book goes through the 13 reasons why they committed suicide. There's actually a show on Netflix.
Yes, I think it was very popular.
It was very popular. Yeah. My daughter didn't know what it was. When the show came out, I said, no, you're not watching it. And then this book shows up in my house. And again, she didn't really know what it was. And come to find out, it had been recommended by the librarian and her teacher. And I was furious.
Whoa.
So
they should have known better.
Right. Yeah. And so
because I read that book and I challenged it at the library, and I did read it cover to cover, and I also watched the Netflix series just to cover all my bases. It's extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
I'm a grown adult and I was disturbed watching it.
Correct.
Multiple times.
And
reading it.
I read the entire book as well.
Does it advocate for suicide? What's it doing?
Kind of. Basically, there's a girl who has been bullied and experienced sexual assault, and she uses her suicide to kind of explain what she's been through, and she makes these tapes, and kind of everyone listens to the tape, and they're one of the reasons why. She has 13 reasons why, and it kind of glorifies it, if you ask me.
It does. It justifies what she did, basically, and it's now they say that it
to convict the others. Is that what it was? To convict them for their
so
sins?
that they know. Right. And but then they list hotlines in the back, and so then that's their justification for, well, this brings attention, and then it does. That's not, nobody's reading any of that information. They're just reading the book.
Wow. So
I went straight to the principal, had a horrible time getting him to pay attention to me and listen to my concern about the book. I did read it just like you did, and it's a horrible book to read even as an adult. I mean, and so
it sounds like that book that I read when I was young, Lisa Bright and Dark, and that is a book about suicide too. And I read that book and was basically traumatized by it when I was young.
There's at least two graphic depictions of sexual assault. Graphic, like.
Yeah. In the book,
and in the Netflix series. Honestly, no one under 18 should be reading something like that, or
probably nobody should be reading it.
It was disturbing to me, and I'm an adult, and I had to take a break after that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
did she read it? Did JJ read it?
Oh heavens no! The day I checked her backpack was the day she had brought it home. She hadn't touched it yet, and so I was fortunate that she had not done that yet.
Yeah.
And so they ended up, I went, Dr. Webster was the principal at the junior high at the time, and he took it to the librarian. There were 3 copies of that book in the library, and they actually did take that out per my request, because I did what someone said. I read the book. I knew exactly what I needed to highlight. And, they had literally just had a kid kill themselves at that school. Why would you? I don't even care. Like at that time, it wasn't even about my child and the challenges that we've been having with her. You literally had a child kill themselves in your school. Why in the world would you have that book in there? Why? That's terrible. And so that was actually my biggest complaint with them. It really didn't have anything to do with my kid. I was more like, your school is still suffering the effects of this suicide in your bathroom, and you have 3 copies of this book in here. You can't justify that to me at all.
The irony of that book too is it kind of highlights how the school administration and the school counselor failed that child. And it's happening by them recommending the book. They're failing those kids that might be dealing with something like that, reading that book, and then it glorifies it, and it's just going to further encourage the child to do that. And it had just happened in the school, and then that's insane to me.
Yeah. So then I kind of that was my only I was done after that for a little while, and then Becca had posted on a Facebook group that her kid had brought home a book, and she was upset, and also in an English class. And she was like, what am I supposed to do? And so I didn't know Becca at the time. I was not involved in any of the concerned parents or anything like that.
So explain the concerned parents of the Ozarks real quick before we go further.
So the concerned parents of the Ozarks is a group of ladies who started seeing these trends in these books, the social emotional learning, the SOS program, and we decided we needed to join forces to get rid of to some of this stuff, and that we wanted to go about it the right way. We wanted to have an organization where we could come together and figure out how to fight that. And so we created at first it was Concerned Parents of Nixa. It grew so quickly that we had to expand it to Concerned Parents of the Ozarks, because we were having people from other districts who wanted to be a part of our organization, and we were able to use what we have done to help them fight in their cities, their smaller cities. And so Concerned Parents of Nixa our membership grew so quickly, we had to expand it to Concerned Parents of the Ozarks. And we continue to grow, and we continue to have people who want to be a part of what they're seeing us do. So anyway, Becca posted this thing, and I messaged Becca, and I said, because she said, I don't know how to go about this. So I told her what she needed to do. I said, you need to make sure you read it. You need to make sure you go up the right chain. She actually, after that, she actually said, hey, why don't you come be a part of this group? And so I joined the group on Facebook, and then they had their first meeting at the rec center in Nixa, where they told about their organization, because they'd started to get the word out. And so we wanted to give them some example. We wanted people to have an opportunity. They did. I was not part of the presentation, which again is probably why I wasn't on anybody's radar for a while. So I came and sat in this huge room full of people who were very interested in what they were doing. And I had never personally met Becca, Carissa, Jen, Bridget. I'd never met any of them. I sat in the middle of this room, and you wouldn't believe who I sat next to. The one person in that room who didn't agree with what we were doing, Tamara.
Oh, Tamara. Tamara loves going to meetings.
Yes. And most of the time, I just sat there, and she didn't agree with what was being said. Of course, it's just same old, like, you want to do it, do it. Don't, you don't have any rights, and blah, blah. And man, I just sat there for the longest time. And then I ended up chiming in. I can't remember what I said. She didn't like it. I was being very polite, and I'll be real honest. I mean, at one point she looked at me and she said, "You must think you're better than me." And I said, "Yes, I do." I do.
Yeah.
And that started off a firestorm. And at the end of the meeting, Becca walked up to me and she said, "You must be Cindy." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so that's how I got involved with the actual group.
Okay.
And started going to the board meetings and reading the books and doing those things. And so it was just a matter of, I told those ladies I was there for the long haul. I was jumping 2 feet in. They knew a little bit about what had happened with JJ. And that's where that all started for me in that organization. So
It was personal.
very, very personal.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you think of the school board over there in Nixa? How have they been helpful or not helpful, or just benign or ineffective, or what? Because they're the elected representatives of the people to affect change, and to hear that program, that SEL program, is still in the school district. Oh, it's in Ozark, it's in Clever, it's all, these things are endemic. They're coming down from DESE, and the NGOs like the, Missouri School Boards Association and the teachers, the state PTA, they're all taking these federal programs and these NGO programs and bringing them into the schools. What's the Nixa School Board like? I know we have some good people on that board.
We do have some good people on that board. So are you talking books in particular? Or are you talking about all of it?
I'm talking about all of it, really. Yeah.
I think the books, they have been
pretty good.
Really good for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's any books that haven't at least been restricted. Every book that we've challenged has been restricted or removed.
Do you guys keep up with the books that they're putting in every year? Because if you look at the Christian County Library, dozens of these books come in, every year. Dozens and dozens more are coming in.
So the last I checked, they weren't actually bringing in any new books.
Okay.
So it was a matter of anything that was maybe still there that we did, and we haven't found anything super egregious to the point where we feel like we need to do anything. So we feel like that was a win for us too, where they weren't bringing in any new books, and if they were, they had decided as a board, I believe, to have a better process to see what was coming in.
Nice.
Because they didn't want to continue to have to
challenge all the
have
time.
challenges, because it's very time consuming. And we weren't relenting on what we were doing. And so we considered that a win for us in that entire aspect. I do believe that, I'll be really honest with you. I think that in regards to the social emotional learning and all of the DEI and all of
CRT,
all of that, I believe that our school district could do a much better job. Now, we had taken some, because I think Mary is the one who challenged a book about police officers.
Yes.
And I understand, of course.
That was
right?
critical.
It was horrible.
Critical race theory book.
So the CRT, that was one of the very first ones. We wanted to go after the sexually inappropriate before we went after the CRT stuff, but I totally was on board with what she was doing because it needs to not be there. So we have a lot of CRT that can probably be, needs to be addressed. I think they do a good job with that. Any time for me that you have any of that information available to kids, it should be up to the parents when that discussion happens. And I think that's part of the issue with all of us, is it should be our decision when that happens. And I think that's what the other side is missing. I think that the school, I'm just going to put it out there, I think and I've said this to the ladies in the concerned parents group, I think this school district manufactures a lot of the problems that they have.
Amen.
And
Amen.
I think they do that because of the almighty dollar. I know that they have a contract with Burl. I
Burl.
cannot stand Burl.
No, Burl is a very evil organization. I know it's in Clever School District.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's in
about
ours too. They have a contract with
Ozark,
them.
yeah.
And
what is that?
Burl. So it's a behavioral center, and it's very left leaning.
They partner with the Trevor Project, which is a pro-transgender organization, and that's geared towards
So is
young
it one
people.
of those things where if a child is assumed or diagnosed or whatever to have an issue, they get funding for that through Burl or through the...
Yeah, that's where they'll recommend that they go, and so there's that contract with them.
Okay.
So yeah, and Burl is I have some personal issue with Burl, and JJ developed some things, and one of the things that we ended up having to deal with her is she started to self-harm, which seems to be as much of a trend as being gay or trans, because I do believe it's trendy to do that. I think a lot of these kids aren't really those things. It's just the thing to do.
When you think about SEL, which is, like we said, it's almost it's a Marxist way of getting you to put aside your own set of values and beliefs in order to accept the ones that the teachers, the schools, the behavioral centers are imposing upon you, such as, just accepting transgender, things like that.
Right.
And so you can imagine a child unable to articulate what it feels like to be told they have to think a certain way.
Right.
And that's what's being done.
Absolutely.
They're being indoctrinated. And so when it's against your will, and you may not be able to articulate that as a kid, and so you're going to want to get an outlet,
Right.
and I think some of these things happen because of that.
Yeah. So I got referred to Burl.
Okay.
JJ had been in some trouble.
And this all happened after that survey, right?
Oh, yeah.
And nothing beforehand, right?
No, absolutely not. We went downhill quickly with her, and things got really bad about a year ago, and we ended up not necessarily being referred. We were told we had to go because we had to press some charges against my child. I did, actually. This is the kind of fight you're in now. Like I'm literally trying to save my child's life.
And they're trying to take over the parenting role.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
It's alienating.
Yeah. So even Christian County Juvenile, they're contracted with Burl. And so we were told this is one of the stipulations you have to do because she was under juvenile, an officer.
Okay.
And so I contacted them because I signed the thing, and they wanted her to go through a program called C-STAR, which is for alcohol and drug abuse. And I contacted them and I told them what was going on. And I said, she's got issues with that. She's doing self-harm. And the lady stopped me and said, oh, well, that's pretty normal. We're not really going to address that. And I said, what? And I said, oh, well, we're done talking. And I hung up and I didn't take her. And I told the corrections officer, because he was like, well, you've done everything you're supposed to accept this. And I said, I don't care if I put my initials next to that. I'm not taking her. And I told him why. And he said, they never should have said that to you. That's inappropriate. Obviously, we don't believe that's normal. But that's the kind of thing you're dealing with when you're dealing with Burl. And so we said, no, we're not doing it. So I think they could, listen, the school is here to teach math, English, history. I don't know when we came to this point where we're spending all of this time doing all of these other things. I get a monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, I don't really remember what it is, from the high school. Sign your kid up for mental health counseling, what speaker this month or this week. And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? You've got kids that have mental problems because you've created this problem. And you continue to not help them, but you continue to hurt them. So as a whole, I think the board does a fairly good job. They've done a great job with the books, but I would like to see them take those other things out of the schools. I really would, even on the high school level, because it's really not. It's not your place to do that. It's mine. It's yours. It's yours.
And
right?
I do believe that those things are actually causing the problems.
Oh, absolutely.
And in the old days, because I'm a good bit older than you guys, if you had kids who were really troubled, the public school said, out. Parents, this is your deal. You handle it. When the child is back on track or whatever, they come back, or they put them in a school that's going to help them. There was never where you were not only accommodating this sort of thing, but you're engendering
Well,
it.
I think part of it too, going back to what you were saying, that they're causing their own issues. Nixa has a big disciplinary problem where they are refusing to discipline. They're anti-bullying, or they have a no tolerance bullying policy, but that I just from the meetings that I've been to, that's clearly not true. Kids are being bullied. They're just not counting. They're not counting that in their record keeping because they get around the policy for it. So they'll have a teacher talk to a student, and that's considered a first whatever.
Right.
And they're not following through. So these kids are being terribly bullied in the school, and it's not being reported or handled or dealt with. So that's another thing. Also, so we moved here for the school district. I had shared that with you.
Right.
Ironically.
Right.
I was a big, I will never homeschool kind of girl.
They say never say never.
Yeah. Definitely. So we moved here, and I couldn't wait. I got the kids. We moved here to a blue ribbon school district. We were so thrilled. We felt so grateful and lucky to be able to be in a top school district. And we enrolled our children. We had 3 children in the schools, and the other 2 were too young at the time. And they were in, keep in mind, we moved here from Texas. The school district that they were in was 300 kids, K through 12, okay? It was a very small school district.
Sure.
You knew everybody. There were 10 kids in your graduating class.
Right.
It was so small and sweet, really. And so we moved here, a much bigger school. I think my 5th grader, she went to Inman. She was fifth grade at the time. She went to Inman, and she was immediately separated from her sister, which they're very close. They're only a year and some change apart. And of course, she was anxious about that because it's a bigger school. Her sister isn't here. She knows nobody, new to the area. And they immediately said she had anxiety problems. They separated her. She went to a counselor without me knowing. And immediately, we're talking right away.
Wow.
And I mean, a lot of those anxieties were totally normal. You're new, you've never been here before, you don't know anybody. But yeah, they said, and so she was crying every day. She didn't want to go to school. So I agree with you that they kind of caused the issues. So they made this big deal out of it. They pulled her out of class. She would have to sit in the nurse's office till she calmed down, and they would call me, and I would go get her. And I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I'm fortunate that I could just drop everything and go get her. But they were talking about, she's going to have special lunch buddies now with all the other kids who are riddled with anxiety. So I'm like, you're already ostracizing her. She's brand new to the school. Now she's labeled as a kid with anxiety or
some other issue.
Yeah, and then they're pulling her out of the classroom every time she has to go pet some rabbit in Zach Rance's office. I don't know. And I'm just like, are you serious? So yeah, we ended up pulling them out shortly after that. Actually,
didn't Lucas have a bullying issue?
No, Sophia had a bullying issue in 4th grade. She was at Matthews.
Okay.
And a little boy kept asking to be her boyfriend, and she was like, I'm not allowed to have a boyfriend. I'm 10, okay? And so he threatened to kill himself. He tried to choke himself on the playground, okay?
My gosh.
So I get a call about this. It's disturbing.
Sure.
And they're like, this is what she saw, and if she wants to avoid that child, he wasn't even in her class. If she wants to avoid him, she can be in the library during recess. And I went, what? So she's going to be punished because some kid is trying to, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So that's what she told me. She was very upset. She's like, I'm not going to be able to see my friends now. Otherwise, I'm going to be tormented by this kid during recess.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I called, and they said, oh, no. We'll fix it. He has to be in the library now. And I was like, we're done.
But it doesn't matter, too, because the damage is already done. right?
Right.
The damage is already done. And I hear story after story after story, like you, like me, of kids that they do that. And instead of,
Yes.
your kid doesn't have anxiety because of some kind of mental illness. They have anxiety or nervous because you're moving them. I don't know
Well, and they're not
I don't know why
safe
it's
at
not
school.
easy to
Come
see
on,
that.
this is not normal adult behavior
Right.
to do what they're doing
Yeah,
at
exactly.
schools.
Yeah.
It's actually, and this is the SEL thing, where you're being coerced and trained into normalizing aberrant behavior on the part of some kids. And the kids who
Exactly.
are absolutely normal
And have a problem with it.
this
Yeah.
are being ostracized and singled out.
Right.
And it's causing them, normal kids, anxiety and stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, the insanity of this whole
Right.
thing. And it all comes down to the SEL,
Absolutely.
the DEI, and CRT.
Yeah.
So all of those things, and they're just desperately evil. How big is your group now? Concerned Parents of the Ozarks.
So it's between, I think it's around 500, and we've got over 100 people waiting for us to vet them and approve them for the group.
Wow.
So it's still, and I looked just the other day, there were 3 brand new people who wanted to be in the group, and I looked at the numbers, like 160 some that were waiting for us to, and there's just 5 admins who go through and do that.
Wow.
And so we're a little bit behind on that, but we try to do a really good job of making sure that these people are really on the same side with us. And so, it continues to have people. And I think us being involved now in the Christian County Library has sparked a little bit more interest, because the ones that I saw the other day are older people who have been at the Christian County Library,
Yes.
but maybe have no dog in the fight with the school board library,
Right.
or any of that. Now which is unfortunate, because if they're grandparents, they have just as much right to be involved in that as anybody else does.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think us kind of putting our face out with the Christian County issue has sparked a little bit more interest. We've kind of seen an uptick in people who are wanting to get in our group again.
Well, that's awesome. Let me just tell you, I looked up to see if 13 Reasons Why was in our local library.
It is.
And there's a copy in the Clever Young Adult Fiction section, in the Nixa Young Adult Fiction, in the Sparta Young Adult Fiction. That's just the books. There are also the seasons 1 and 2 in Ozark, the DVD. So, and
Which, by
let
the
me
way,
just-
season 2, I also watched.
Yeah.
There's a school shooter on that one, and extremely disturbed, stalking, like,
Let me just put out there that in the Ozark School District, I was speaking with Dr. Craig Carson, who I think is the curriculum director, and he said that when students request a book that they don't have in the library, a book like that, for instance, they use the library, the Christian County Library, as a quote unquote scapegoat, and they tell them to go pick the book up in that library. Also, the bookmobile.
he actually said that?
Yes, he actually said that, and I'm not the only one who witnessed it.
Wow.
And so, look, this stuff is endemic in all the schools, and I don't care how nice you think your teachers, your principals, your superintendents, and your school board members are. They're all invested in the system. The system it sucks you in, and you just go along with the system, because if you're a teacher who disagrees, you can be terminated, and you can get, and so they just, for job security reasons, for some of them, it's ideological and that sort of thing. So there has to be something that breaks that system up.
Right.
And I think at the only place we're at right now is our elected representatives, which are school board members. So, that's a big thing, that parents, grandparents, concerned citizens need to get on the ball with this stuff, because
the irony about that book too is the suicide rate in Nixa is there's ones that you hear about, and then there's the ones that you don't hear about. And the only reason I know that is not just because I have a child that's in the schools, but even before that, I was a volleyball coach, and a majority of my players were Nixa students.
Okay.
And I had every year I had my volleyball players telling me, my friend killed themselves. And I'm like, that didn't even make, like, nobody sent out a thing. They're like, well, they're not important enough. You know, like the kid that hung himself, you can't hide that, right?
Right.
The kid that shot himself, you can't hide that.
Well,
right?
and if they suicide themselves outside of the school will take no, you know, that it's all hands off.
Right.
Even while the child is there in the school, they're all hands on with that kind of stuff. But if the child does it outside of school, I know in Ozark, a young girl who apparently was transitioning transing at school. She killed herself on her 15th birthday at home. And it was completely, you know, just, it's shushed. These things are shushed.
Oh, absolutely. We were talking about that. They sweep them under the rug so fast and just forget about it.
Yes.
Right? If I can't see it, it didn't happen. That's how they are. And I feel like that they're like, let me finish this thought. The interesting part about that book is Nixa has the third highest suicide rate in this state.
What?
Third highest in this state. I'll give you two guesses what the other two are. Kansas City and St. Louis. Nixa, Missouri. Third highest suicide rate in the state. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And people don't know it and they don't believe it because they don't know what the numbers really are. And you're not just talking students, right? There was a resource officer that killed himself in this district a couple of years ago. Just trauma from whatever. I'm not sure what it was related to, but third highest. And then you're touting this book on top of all of that. And you have no idea what you're doing.
No.
You have no idea that you have no idea the epidemic that you're causing in this area. And people don't know what's going on because they're not involved enough to know that.
No, and they resist being involved because I think parents think, oh, both parents have to work. We can't make alternative exceptions, or we can't fix the system. I know there's a big sense of hopelessness, I believe, among parents that they can't fight the system. However, when you look at people, like for instance, the local health board, they were able to flip that board in the last election. And so they're implementing a lot of really good, healthy things for Christian County. And you can do it, but you have to get involved. And you can no longer remain silent. And you just have to know that you can effect change for the good.
Right.
But you have to join groups. Right. And you have to get active.
Right. Yeah. And that program, the DEI, the SEL, the suicide program, that's geared towards the acceptance of those groups, the transgenders and gays. And listen, none of us have an issue with that as far as you as a person. What's funny is the left that hates me so much in this area doesn't know that my best friend is a lesbian.
Right. Mine too.
Isn't that funny?
Yes, she's a Canadian lesbian.
Yeah, she's a lesbian.
Yeah.
You know what's funny though is like her and I can sit. We actually agree on a lot of things.
Yep.
Like she doesn't approve of the trans movement, which is funny to me.
Well, it shouldn't be funny if most lesbians and homosexual guys are just like, this is crazy. We already have our rights.
Yeah.
Why are you?
Yes.
Why is the queer theory, which is Marxism, by the way, queer theory is anything that isn't normal is good.
Yeah.
And anything normal is bad. That's queer theory. It's Marxism.
Yeah.
So the Q and the T have subsumed the LGB in there and are they're wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this small group of people, right, that they think that we're targeting. Right. But what's really sad about that is they use the word marginalized every time they refer to them. I don't believe that. I'm like, my best friend isn't my gay best friend. She's just my friend, right? Yep, that doesn't define who she is, right? It makes no difference because it makes no difference to me. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that group is not only they're such a small, even in this country, what they're like 4% that we're trying to be forced to kowtow to what they're demanding, and yet they have the highest suicide rate. That's alarming, right? And that hits home for me. Yes. And the reason it hits home for me is I have a family member who is transitioning and she just tried to commit suicide. It's not a fun feeling.
No.
So and I knew when that started, I was like, this may not end well. And I told some of my family members, I'm like, you have to be careful because she'll end up a statistic if you're not if you're not careful. And she did try to end up a statistic. So the idea of that and this small group that is one of the highest suicide rates.
Well, and it's because they usually have
they're focusing on society acceptance and not self-acceptance. So maybe not everybody likes the body they're born. I mean, I wish I was 30 pounds thinner and blonde, but it is what it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so instead of doing self-acceptance, they're doing societal acceptance, which you'll never get.
Right.
Nobody will ever get total societal acceptance.
Right.
There will always be somebody who hates white, straight females, and there will always be somebody who doesn't like, whatever group it is. And so instead of focusing on societal acceptance, focus on accept yourself, accept who you are, and don't worry about what everyone else thinks. And then you won't be so much emotional, I don't know.
Pain.
I could be talking out my ass here, but
No, I think you're fine. I think you're making some really good points, quite frankly.
So another interesting thing is there were some overlaps on books that Concerned Parent Group had challenged in the school district and then books that were challenged at the library. You guys had a lot more success. I'll say that. We had a 22 challenge book reconsideration requests. We only had 2 that were removed. One of them I had done. But most of them were retained or just relocated. 13 reasons, including 13 reasons why it's still in the young adult.
Young adult, which young adult is something that activist librarians came up with in order to hide the fact that that's being geared for ages 12 to 17.
Right.
It's not really young adult. It's you could say the teen section. It's 12 to 17. So they are hiding that because, again, they're on, especially with the American Library Association and the Missouri Library Association, which is a chapter of the American Library Association. And I would also just put out there that right now the Secretary of State's library guidelines and stuff follow a lot of the ALA and MLA guidelines and policies and things like that. These things are they're designed to indoctrinate. This isn't your old time librarian or your old time school teacher or anything. These programs, these books are all designed to affect societal change and not in a good way.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with both in the library and the school systems right now.
And that's what we're fighting, right? We're fighting that. We're not trying to
take away other people's rights.
Right. We're not trying to do that. We're not trying to make them stick out. Right. We're not trying to do that. I had a really great conversation with my best friend. And we were talking about the library issue because I told her I was, doing that because she's all for that. And, she gave some really good points. She's like, if it's like, are you trying to make a different section with a big rainbow flag? And I was like, no, that's not what we're trying to do because we're not trying to, because if those people are looking to that for help and they need it, then they need to go there. And again, I don't care if they go do that. I care if my daughter grabs it. I care if your daughter grabs it. I care if whatever, but we want to make it nonchalant and easy for them too. So we're not trying to put a big, neon sign over their head that says, I'm gay, look at me. If you're struggling and you need help and that's where you're going to go. So this was a win-win for everybody as far as we were concerned. We were trying to make sure that there was something that the labels and whatever that made it so parents who didn't want their kids to have it, they didn't grab it. Their parents could say, if it has this on it, that's a no, right? Because that's my job. And then for the others that wanted it, instead of having to go through or go up to the desk and ask somebody, they don't have to do that either. That label is right there. If they know what to look for, then they can go nonchalantly get that book and they can be on their way. They're not hurting anybody.
Is this in the schools?
No, this is like, that was one of our, with the Christian County, the way we were, the way some of us were looking at that.
Well, and
like,
we were trying to compromise.
Right.
Let's at least compromise so that parents who don't want their children, exposed to this, what most parents would consider age inappropriate things, let us retain our rights while not harming your rights.
Right.
And it's very simple.
Yeah.
And that's what either labeling or stickers or relocation does. But we have been there's been a refusal to compromise at all. And in fact, Elizabeth Dudash Buskirk at the last library meeting basically said,
compromise does not mean you get what you want.
Yes. And I'm
going to quote that.
I am telling you, I was, okay, lady, that can go both ways, because I think we would all prefer that the library would not put sexually explicit images in books and then have them seeded throughout the library.
Well, I think
children.
that's the main point too, is that let's target this better so that the people who want that have that, and the people who don't.
Correct.
And so it's not a 12-year-old looking through the fantasy section at the library doesn't come across I'm a Gay Wizard, which has graphic depictions of sexual assault, graphic depictions of sexual intimacy, gay sexual intimacy. They don't need to find that because they like Harry Potter, but the kid who does want to read that Wattpad, book can. And so...
Well, and let's not even get into things like the Libby app, which, allows kids unfettered access to a lot of this stuff and is freely promoted in the library. So, I mean, we're dealing with an inundation, a flood of this kind of stuff as a way to revolutionize society. And
I think you had also done A Court of Thorns and Roses too. That's one that
I started to read it, but I did for one thing, I went through the first chapter and the writing was so poor that I just couldn't even keep going.
I do it on Audible. That's where I have to do a lot of these books because I can't get through it otherwise.
Yeah. Another one that I had done, and I wish I could remember the title of it, but I'm 52 years old, so essentially the book was about a cutter, a girl, a young girl, and that was in the Nixa High School.
Whoa.
And at the time, self-harm was, I was unaware that I was going to get knee deep into that. And so, and that book was so bad, it literally took me days to get through, because I would have to put it down.
Same.
And I'm not joking when I tell you, as I'm reading this book, I honest to goodness, I was like, God, when I am done with this book, I need you to completely erase this from my memory, because I cannot walk around with the knowledge of what is in this book. And honest to goodness, I couldn't tell you one thing that's in that book.
Good, because Lord will
I was
deliver
like,
you of that stuff.
I cannot. Yeah. But you take a book like that, and self-harm is rampant in this area. I mean, I'm just talking like my children or my child, her friends, people that talk to me that are like, we didn't even know this was a thing.
It's been a thing since millennials.
Right? It's the craziest thing ever. But then again, so just like the 13 Reasons Why, you've got another epidemic of self-harm, and you've got a book in here that's glorifying what is going on. I don't understand that at all. And so I don't know what's in that book, because I asked the good Lord, please don't ever let me remember this book at all.
And so we have to talk about how these images are burned into the brains, into the minds of children. I remember when I was in high school, I was at a friend's house, and her older brother, who was in his 20s, told us to come in a room. He wanted to show us something. And so we all troop in the room, and he has on this hardcore porn movie. And we literally saw like maybe 10 seconds of it before we knew, but it burned into my brain. You can never get rid of that stuff unless you get delivered of it, you know. And it's the same with books, with images in books. I mean, I can pull up that, what is that one? It's a Gender Queer. That book, Gender Queer, with all those images. It's so disturbing. And it's disturbing to an adult who has kind of has developed an immunity maybe or a revulsion to these things. Just strengthen, they're stronger. And then you put this in the hands of 12, whatever, and 13, even 15, because I was about 16 when I saw that image, which is, to this day, I can't even stand thinking about it. And so the harm that is being done to children it's immense. And you know what? They never tell. Did I ever go and tell my mom and dad what happened?
Right.
I never did, because you just don't, it's so, something in your spirit, there's something so wrong with it that you don't tell, you don't talk about it.
Right.
And
there's a lot of research out there to back that, what it does to the brain. Pornography, even just sexually inappropriate, doesn't have to fall under the guidelines of what pornography actually is. There's enough research out there that if this district, so let's go back to that, if this district just did enough, they know the research. I in no way think that there's anybody on that board that is not an intelligent person. So do your research. The research shows us that what this does to the brain, right? And all you have to do is look at that and go, this is not good for our kids. If you're really here for the kids, you the blue ribbon, right? Then you're not doing right by them, because you're more concerned about the accolades and the awards than you are actually worried about these children. And that is very evident when you look at, right? That's what drew us here. Right. We were like, I want the best school for my kids.
And I Googled, I Googled Nix's school scandal. I mean, I found nothing until we moved here. And then it was like months after we moved here, there was a teacher sex scandal. And I was like, what's going on?
And then it's just been worse and worse and worse. I'm right there with you. There was none of that. That's what drew it. We did the same thing. But if you're looking at that research and you're really doing the right thing, then you get away from Burl, you get away from DEI, you get away from social emotional learning, you take out the SOS program, you do all of those things, and you get back to what's really important, and it is those kids. And listen, that's why I jumped headfirst into this, because I watched what it did to my own child, right? And I'm still battling for her life and her soul. And we're in a good place right now, but I know that she could easily go right back to that if given the opportunity. If she was going to these classes, if she was going to this mental health thing, and every time she sees it, she's like, I don't have to go, right? And I'm like, no, you don't have to go. No. And she wants no part of it.
That's a good way to bring into the conversation. Courage is a habit. Google it, people. courageisahabit.org, I believe. They have all kinds of opt-outs for school surveys, and they have just all kinds of educational graphics that tell you what SEL, DEI, and CRT are doing. Ways to deal with your school administration when you're opting your child out of these surveys and things like that. It's a great website to access.
And I don't think that parents understand, because I even got told one time by one of the principals, once you bring your kid to this school, there's a term for it, but basically we're the parent now. And I said, no, I'm still the parent.
Yeah.
Make no mistake.
Yeah. And you're the schoolmaster.
Right.
Big difference.
Yeah. And I think that, you talked about a bullying issue. We discussed this, you and I did. It's huge. And you know what? Some of it is kids, but I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of it is teachers and administrators that bully. And I don't think that they do it in the way that kids do it, but I think there are a lot of parents who don't realize that they are still where the buck stops. The buck stops with me. Yep. You don't have to go to a program. You can opt out of anything. But what it really should be, and we've pushed for this, and I think we need to do it again, the concerned parents, is we pushed for an opt-in instead of an opt-out.
Interesting. So in other words, you have to get permission for every single thing. That is such a great idea.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And we that is something that would make it a lot easier. But the parents because parents I don't think parents realize you can take your kid out of anything.
Yes.
I can take my kid out of school if I want to.
Yes.
I can. Yep. She cannot go to school. I can go get her. I don't have to give you a reason. I stopped giving reasons why I was taking my kid out of school a long time ago. You want to know why? Because it's none of your business.
That's right.
Right? It's none of your business. And it's my business and my place to teach them these things if I choose to do so. If something pops up and I'm like, okay, we'll discuss it based on your age. But when you're not giving us that choice, that's not okay. Whether it's SEL, the SOS program, the DEI, a trans, the furry issue, I shouldn't be discussing that with my child until I'm ready to do that, until I feel like my child is ready to do it, right? Because even though my kid is super intelligent, that kind of stuff she wouldn't have been ready for, obviously, because she wasn't ready for that program, and I didn't. I carry a lot of guilt because I let her do it, but I'm also angry with the school. And so parents, I don't think parents, because the school tells them once you leave them here, they're ours to do whatever they. And to me, that's a bullying thing.
Yes, for sure.
And parents don't know, and that's not okay. That is not okay.
That's so interesting, because I was attending an Ozark School District Board meeting some months ago where a parent got up and was talking about how one of the teachers had been bullying their child for months. And it was pretty harrowing to listen to the stuff that goes on. Yeah. And I doubt anything was done, because they'll listen. They say they listen, but there's never any action on it. And so your options are very limited, either pull your kid out of that particular class or demand that they not, have to attend that class or whatever. But
well, it's also pretty intense. Like, I mean, if you say anything about Nixa School District not being anything other than state champion footballer, blue ribbon, this and that, the best teachers, the best everything, you're almost bullied, just like, because you didn't have a good experience, you're almost just bullied for that.
Just like on the chit chats and stuff?
Like in the community. Like if you don't wear the Nixa gear, if you don't wear, if you're not 100% supporting the teachers no matter what.
It's a cult. It's like a cult.
A little bit. Yeah. And it blows my mind, because I'm like, you know what? It's not good for everybody.
Well, the vast majority of our property tax dollars goes to the school. I mean, it's over 80% in Clever. It's around 75% in Nixa. And so they themselves have become an extremely powerful system. And so
the brainwashing is real, because if you say anything.
That's true. That is so true. And listen, like, the bullying, like you talked about, zero tolerance, right? So let me give you a story, another story about JJ, and it's kind of a funny story, but then it turned into a not so funny story. So there was a kid in her 6th grade at John Thomas. Okay. And he was a bully. Okay, I know his family, I know him. And he went to take a swing at one of JJ's friends, a girl.
Whoa. Wow.
Well, my little second degree black belt jumped in and blocked it.
I'm trained for this.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the funny part of the story, right? Yeah. And she just was like, nope, you're not gonna. And she's trained. She thought she'd defuse it. She went and sat down. Well, this kid challenged her, and he's a big kid. And my daughter said, listen, I'm going to need you to sit down and I've already warned you once, don't come over here. Well, he got up out of his chair, and he walked over, and he bowed up on her, standing over her. And he's like, I dare you. And I went, uh-oh. And she stood up. And he reared back, and JJ kicked him
in the right spot.
Listen, in his gut, actually. But I wish. And this kid, when she was little, 8. I hadn't started Taekwondo yet, so I have to preface. I'm going to tell you how hard this child she kicks hard, and there's a nerve that goes down the side of your leg.
Sciatic nerve. Yeah.
And if you kick it, it's a femoral nerve, actually. Okay. And if you kick it, you have to kick it pretty hard, you'll drop a grown man.
Okay.
So my daughter one day was like, Mama, spar me. And I was like, all right. And we both, right? And she hauled off and round kicked me and hit me right there. And she dropped me like a sack of potatoes. Okay.
Wow.
My husband was like, oh my gosh, what'd you do to your mom? And I was like, I'm good. Oh my gosh. And then my daughter is like, Mom. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Because it's not that it hurt me necessarily, but she hit me right where she didn't know. So I mean, she dropped me hard. And I'm a pretty stout, strong, And I went down. So keep that in mind. So this kid decides, what he did is he cornered JJ. And now she's fight or flight.
Yes.
And he came at her.
Oh, boy.
And she turned to the side and she side kicked him and dropped him.
Oh, man.
Hit him right in his stomach. And went and sat down.
He learned a lesson that day.
No, he did not.
Oh, really?
He still is. But
wow.
the school called me when I got home. Now, I'd picked JJ up, and this was kind of towards the end of the day. So when she got picked up, she was like, Mom.
Yeah. You're about to hear about it.
She told me the story. You know, I did?
Yeah.
I high-fived her, and I took her out for ice cream.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because I said, we don't put up with that, right? The school called me. The principal called me. Called JJ and this kid into the office the next day, and JJ to apologize. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And she said, well, we don't condone violence. And I said, violence? Oh, no, that wasn't violence. And I said, I'm gonna tell you something, because you all know what my child does. You're lucky that kid still has his teeth. Because if that were me, I wouldn't have stopped. And she said, well, we're gonna have a talk with him tomorrow. And I said, all right.
Yeah.
And so I told JJ, and I said, don't you dare apologize. You stuck up for your friend. He came after you. He cornered you. You did exactly what you were trained to do, and then you were done.
Yeah.
Right? So the next day, I get a phone call after they have a meeting, and the principal she's irate. And I was like, why are you so upset? And she's like, well, JJ should have apologized. And I said, no, ma'am.
Yeah.
He was doing violence. My child was not. And again, my child did exactly what she was trained to do. She warned him twice, and he still didn't. And I said, are you suspending him? You ready? Nope. Because
He was the quote-unquote victim.
yeah, she's like, did you see the mark on his stomach? I said, I did not. I don't even care.
Yeah.
And I said, do you want to know what I did? I high-fived my kid and took her out for ice cream. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Now, you're not suspending him? She's like, well, if we suspend him, we have to suspend JJ. And I said,
Excuse me?
why would you have to suspend JJ? Well, she kicked him. I said,
Because they're training the children to be victims. Unless you're a victim, unless you let yourself be victimized,
I said,
you're in trouble.
They're training you to not be able to defend yourself. That's what they're doing, either verbally or physically. You're not allowed to defend yourself. And this is what allows the chaos and the breakdown of society to happen, because you have grown-ups.
That's why in Great Britain, if someone breaks in your house, you have to run away from them and just let them rob you.
Right.
Because you cannot defend yourself at all.
Yeah.
so that story, while funny,
Yes, is
ended up being
indicative.
absolutely infuriating to my husband and I.
Yeah.
And we told her, under no circumstances would we expect you to do something different ever. Right? You
Right.
absolutely, you defended your friend, you defended yourself, you walked away.
Yes.
The kid is lucky.
Yes.
He's lucky. But I actually said, at one point I said, well, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and suspend him, and then you go ahead and suspend mine. Because he deserves to be suspended. My kid's not going to get punished by me. She didn't do anything wrong. She's like, no, we just decided not to do that. I said, so your zero tolerance policy, you just eliminated that.
Excellent point.
And because you can't suspend one without the other, you mean you can't make a distinction. That's the problem too with these blanket policies.
Yeah.
Right? My kid should not have been suspended. Absolutely not. Nobody believes that. He should have been suspended because he tried to hit 2 girls. 2.
I've heard it said too that they don't want to suspend the kids because what will the parent do with the kid when they're at work? Where's the kid going to go? That's what I've heard them say.
And you see, this all that does is enable that behavior to continue on,
100%.
and for parents to also justify and enable that kind of behavior. So it's the most dysfunctional. It's I have no words for.
Yeah, it's blanket policies too that I think the school board could go back through and say, obviously we have these policies in place, but your teachers and your administrators need to know that based on a kid that you might know, can you make an exception? Can you do something different? Yes. JJ's just got a discipline not too long ago for another stupid blanket policy that she didn't deserve, and I'll tell you what it was, because it's this kind of stuff that I'm like, these are still children, right? who cannot make good decisions. Goes back to the development of the brain, whether you're looking at pornography or the fact that you want to treat them like adults, but they're still kids. So JJ's got a bit of an anger issue, and she gets that from her mom because I'm German. And she did the right thing one day. She got really super upset, and instead of staying in the class, and she walked
up
out.
and left,
she walked out. Well, then she got in trouble for it.
Yeah.
I was like, so you're going to do what now? You're going to give her detention or ISS or whatever it is you're doing. I said, would you rather she have stayed there and been angry and caused a problem? She left, by the way, under your advice, this certain vice principal, under your advice, walk away. And now she's getting in trouble for walking away. Well, because she went to a restricted area when she walked away. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, she did what you asked, and then you punished her anyway because she went to the wrong place, but she took herself out of the situation like you asked her to, and then she still ends up getting punished. Why couldn't you say, hey, maybe next time, here's where you could go. You could have come to my office. You could have gone here. You could have gone to one of the counselors. There's a room that they can go to. But again, she's 15, so she's not thinking about all of that. So she's still a kid. And you mean to tell me she hasn't been in trouble all year that you couldn't have said, hey, listen, we're obviously going to cut you some slack because we're glad that it didn't escalate. But he was like, nope, this is the policy. And I'm like, something's got to change.
Well, you see, kids can't win, whether
Yeah,
they're
they
on the
can't.
right or the wrong. I mean, even the kids who are doing wrong can't win because they're being reinforced in doing and being wrong.
Right.
The good kids are being punished for being, it's a no-win situation. It's very Dickensian. It's Oliver Twist-like stuff.
Yeah.
But,
we've fought with JJ since she was in elementary school that, she can stand up and do the right thing. She can do it respectfully. We've always taught her to do it respectfully. But in the end, she would come home and be like, I didn't. And I'm like, and I would ask her why. And this was her response. I'm more afraid of the school than I am you. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't need you to be afraid of me, but I see what you're saying. And that goes back to that whole bullying, right? She is more afraid of what that school is going to do to her than the fact that I'm going to pick her up or talk to her or go in and say, I don't agree with that, and you're not going to, and I'm going to do the same thing I've always done, which was to high five her and take her out for ice cream. But I can't tell you how many times we've had to, she's told us, I know what you told me, but Mom, I'm so scared of what the school is going to do to me that I can't. And I'm like, that's a real problem.
and it is for parents too. They're very afraid that their child will be singled out. If they say anything, their child's going to be bullied and singled out.
And they will be.
Yes, and that's the unfortunate.
Yeah, and she has been.
So,
And she has been.
Yeah.
And it's a battle. And it shouldn't be that way.
No.
It shouldn't be that way. And something has to change. And so it's not just books that's a battle. And, I put it in the story that I wrote on Concerned Parents, and you can go back and find that. Anybody can. My story with her. But this isn't just a battle of books. I mean, we're really battling for our children. And this comes down to good and evil. It really does.
It does.
And until people wake up and see that, we're not ever going to win this battle. And we have to take it where we can get it. And our children are far too important. You've probably learned that hard lesson. I've learned that hard lesson. My kid comes number one, period. But when she's wrong, she's wrong. I'm not that parent. Like, I've had plenty of times where I'm like, you did it.
On you. Yeah.
You did it. Like, I'm fair when it comes to that, but I'm still in her corner. I'm still her biggest advocate. And until we start to do that as parents, and we start to take our children back from the schools and the indoctrination that the public school system is, we're going to lose our kids.
Yes.
And we can't afford to do that. And there are lots of kids, unfortunately, out there who don't have parents who are going to do it for them. So whether you're talking about the books, or you're talking about the SOS program, you've got kids that are in the system that don't have people who are advocating for them in that way. And that's another reason for me, I jumped into this fight, because it wasn't just about my kid, it's about your kids, and it's about Carissa's kids, and it's about Becca's kids, and it's about anybody else's kid that I don't know. I'm not in it for me. I stayed in the background for a really long time. And And at this point, I'm not in the background anymore. And I'm happy to take whatever people are going to give me, because in the end, none of that matters to me. What matters to me is that one day, and I stand before God.
Oh, that's what I always say. I
He'll
don't want
look
him to say I did not know you.
You didn't do what I asked you to do, Cindy. You didn't fight the fight I needed you to fight. And this is what happened as a result of that. And I cannot do that.
Yeah.
And so none of that stuff matters to me.
Have you ever had, so when you've had interactions with the opposition, people who are fully invested in the school system and the things that are being done, do you think that we have the power to change minds, or do we have to just really dig in, because we're really dealing with principalities and powers? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that, I think we have the power to change minds, but I think that power comes from us praying for those people.
Thank you.
And until we plant that seed and we see that, I'm not going to change anybody's mind. You're not going to probably change my mind if you're talking to someone on the other side. Can we come to a place where we're like, hey, here's what I think and here's what I think, and where can we meet in the middle? And then as a Christian, take that and put that person on your prayer wall or in your prayer journal and say, God, please soften their heart, right? And just win one more over for the kingdom to help. Can we do that? Absolutely. Yeah. But we cannot, as Christians, we're taught we can't do, whether we're fighting for that or fighting for something else, we cannot do that alone. Right?
True.
You have to fight that battle on your knees, and that's exactly where we have to fight it from. And then we go into the battles that we choose, and those ladies, myself included, we pray about everything that we do. I prayed before I came to this. God, please let my words help somebody else. Because this is not about Cindy Dickens. This is not about people looking at me and going, oh my gosh, look what you're doing. I don't want any of that. I really don't. Right. I want children to be safe, and I want hearts to be changed. And that's the only way we're going to be able to accomplish what we're setting out to do. And again, I don't want to stand before God and say I didn't do enough.
I think that's a common theme in the people we've been interviewing, is almost like a personal reluctance to do this, but feeling led by God to do it, or a responsibility to do it, a duty. And it's that's most people. They don't like getting up at a school board meeting and speaking in front of 100 people and cameras and feeling, insecure about public speaking. None of us are just like, oh yeah, I like being in front of cameras and having people call me a Nazi. And this is so fun to be on Facebook and have people say my children should be taken from me.
Or be misrepresented in the press.
Over and over.
Or have the opposition excoriate you on their websites and on their public social media.
And they'll dig up anything. We've tried to just say, as our group, we have tried to not be we're not trying to be better than them, but we're just saying, listen, we're not going to go there. Could we do the same thing? Could we dig up dirt on you? Could we do all of those things? Absolutely. But that's not the way God wants any of us to do that.
No.
And so a personal story, you would ask me if I had been, the media, I've not been, what's funny is the two board meetings that I spoke at for the Christian County Library, I made the news both times.
I know, you did.
And I'm like, look at me. No, not really. I mean, everyone else was telling me, and I'm like, I'm what? And I'm like, out of all of those speakers, why am I the one that's on there? I don't like any of that, because I have people saying things to me they think it's fun, but I'm like, I'm not doing it to get myself on the news. But that's a side to that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But I mean, how has it hardened you? Is what I'm saying.
It's hardened me because they come after your children.
Yeah.
They came after my husband.
Yeah, your family.
So my this is public knowledge, and but the media is not who attacked me. I got attacked by the group.
Which group?
The U-Turn and Education members, one in particular, and she dug up some some dirt on my husband. That's not really dirt.
Yeah.
But my husband had been I will not tell you the whole story because it makes me cry to this day. That was 20 some years ago. But my husband had been in a horrific accident and he killed a lady.
Okay. A car accident?
Yeah, he was actually in his work truck.
Okay.
It has zero to do with everything that we're doing. And I had a member get on a discussion page. I don't even remember what it was at the time, and we didn't have them blocked, and she got on Facebook for the world and said, didn't your husband kill somebody? And I was like, wow, and just left it right there. And I was furious, and my husband was angry. He's like, well, how do they even know that? He's like, not that it's not, like, you could get on and probably find it. It took me forever to find it. I was like, what the heck? Like, you're really digging. Like, I didn't even think they knew my husband's name. And because I was still very much in the background. And I didn't say a word. I just, because I'm like, I am absolutely not going to go down this road with you. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea how awful that is to live with that, even though it was an accident. So, but they made it sound like he walked in somewhere and just shot somebody. Right?
Yeah, that he'd murdered someone.
But I wasn't going to dignify that. And so I just let it go, and I screenshotted it. And then my husband, he actually got on, somebody had said something, and he posted a funny meme of a purple-haired lady and something else. And a different person got on there and said, aren't you the guy who killed somebody? And I was like, wow. And so that attack, that hurts. Like, that's a wound with my family that does not go away.
Well, sure.
And they had no business bringing that up, but that's what they do.
It's an intimidation technique.
Yeah, absolutely. They thought I was gonna, that I was gonna stop. And all it did was make me more mad and make me more determined. Because
I think that's indicative of this group in Christian County, the people who are committed to helping children. When you do stuff like that, it just makes us stronger. Yeah. It's very strange, but it does, because we've been in different battles throughout our lives, and we've come together. I think God has brought us all together, and there's a good number. I mean, we're, I think, a lot larger than anything that the opposition is.
What's interesting too is they keep saying an outside group, and what they're referring to is a bunch of people who aren't necessarily even affiliated with each other at all. We just have a common interest or a common goal.
Right.
And that's what's so funny to me is they think we're just like
some kind of
four people who are like super coordinated or something. And it's like, if you only knew like how uncoordinated we are at times.
And you know what's funny about that too is that the U-turn in education, they have a lot of bigger outside help, and yet they keep losing. And they keep losing because, honest to goodness, they don't have God on their side.
Right.
And until they figure that out,
and
they decide to be on the right side of things, they're going to continue to lose. Like, I'm not kidding when I tell you everything that we have done, we feel like we've won. And you can see that with Mary being on the board, with Alex being on the school board, with getting Bridget on the board. We were behind all of that. We were campaigning for those people.
Yes.
And I do believe that that's because God has ordained for them to be there, because we're doing the right thing. And once we stop doing that, we're going to start seeing the failures on our part. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. So I do believe that because we are doing what God has called all of us to do, me getting involved, all of those ladies getting involved, that God is 100% on our side. And if you're battling good and evil is never going to win if you know your Bible. And so we have said, listen, we have to remain on that side, and we have to, as hard as this is, to not stoop to that level and do the things that they're doing. We have to rise above it, because if we don't, we are going to lose, and we cannot afford to do that.
So do you have advice for any parent who might be going through this with their child currently, and how to get involved and what to, how to deal? Do you have any tips?
Man, you know what? I wish I could tell them that if they go to their school, they're going to get the help that they want, but they're probably not, unfortunately. Yeah. And that's just personal experience. That's probably going to make somebody call me or text me or email me or whatever. But it's true, and I say that based on experience, and I say that based on experience from people that I'm close to that have had similar experiences. I would say that because my parents raised me this way, here's what you should do. You should go directly, and that's biblical, but you should go directly to that person, whether it's the teacher. And then if that doesn't solve the problem, then you need to climb the ladder, right? We're taught that our entire lives. to go. And then if that doesn't work, then you go to the next level and you go to the next level. And then if that doesn't work, then you find an organization like Concerned Parents and you reach out to us. Listen, we are here to help. We really are. It can be us. It can be another group if you can find it. I don't know of any in this area, but you should go to that school. Above all, don't stop fighting for your children, because you actually have their best interest at heart. No one else does. No one has your best interest, your kids' best interest at heart except for you.
Wisdom.
You know, and so no one knows your child, your children. No one knows my child the way that I do. I'm it, right? You're it. You're the mom. And I'm not saying that the dad isn't important, but we're the ones out there on the front lines fighting like that. Just don't give up on your kid. Find a way to help them. If you have to switch schools and take them out, if you have to homeschool them, do that. Unfortunately, some of us don't have that luxury.
Right.
You talked about the fact that you said something about, having to take your kid out.
Right.
What were you?
I was homeschooled, and I'm not against homeschooling because I'm doing it now, but I just was like, that's something I'm not interested in doing. And,
Yeah. And the school, like you said, that you were talking about how the school, like, they don't care if it puts the parent at,
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's interesting. You say that. And I know someone's not going to like this, but I was ticked when they canceled school for the football thing. Because you canceled an entire district. You want to cancel the high school? Go ahead. This goes back to this. You want to cancel the high school because it's a high school football game? You go ahead and do that. You're literally putting sports above everything
else.
Everything.
Yes.
I was livid. I got on Facebook and I put it out there, and man, I got attacked. You're right. If you're not 100% go, yay, rah, rah, football. Oh, I had people, and I'm like, listen, I wasn't like that when I was in school. Here's what we did. If you wanted out for something like that, you opted your kid out.
Yeah.
Right? Your parents had to handwrite a note that you had to turn in. Do you know how many parents were probably scrambling
to try and find childcare?
They don't care. All they cared about was that football team. I was livid about it.
Yeah.
It didn't affect me in the least.
Did they do even younger grades, like elementary?
They canceled the entire district.
See, I'm out of touch now because I'm not.
From the preschool,
that's crazy,
all the way up to the high school.
And when you have little kids,
it was half a day. And it doesn't matter if it's half a day or if it's a full day. It doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people don't have the time off to do that, so they have
the funds to pay for the childcare.
But you see, that's why the schools now are trying to get preschool daycare and stuff into the schools now, because they're trying to get you from cradle to past college. It's still cradle to grave stuff, but they're fighting very, very hard now to get preschools and childcare into the school system,
which wouldn't have helped a lot of those other parents.
No, it wouldn't have helped anybody if they called everybody off.
Yeah. You want to cancel the high school? I don't even think they should have canceled the high school. Yeah. They should have said, if you want your kid to go, I didn't want my kid to go 3 hours away. The game that started at 7:00 at night. No, absolutely not. What is wrong with you? I would never do that.
Yeah.
But you could have said, if you want to go, if you wanted your kid to go and you want to be that parent, rah, good for you. Go be that parent. But you put every parent, especially young children and multiple children, like you said, right? And someone got on there and said, well, you should have a plan B. You gotta be kidding. There are lots of families in this community who don't have a plan B because they're plan A, B, C, and D. That's all they have. So you either have to take that kid out and put him with someone you have to pay. And maybe you don't have the money for that because this economy sucks, right? And money is hard to come by.
Right.
Or you have to take a half a day off work. Now you're still
losing
money. I didn't care. And I was angry because you tout this blue ribbon school and yet you don't give one flying rat's behind about all of these parents that you just put in a really bad situation for football.
Well, and you see, our society is already being atomized by the fact that when a school does that, it puts all the parents in a tizzy who don't have the child care because our society has so focused on two-parent, everybody has to work. There's not they're making restrictions on somebody, just a neighbor watching a couple kids. They're trying to make it so that it's government, whether it's government schools or government in general, is the one taking over the, what do I want to say? They're taking over every aspect of what it means to be a self-sufficient, sovereign individual.
Yeah.
And they're taking it away from us. And that's, and I look at it from that perspective. You're seeing the results of it, but I'm looking at their plan behind all that is so that they are in control of every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And it's evil.
It is.
Deeply evil.
And the irony to that is they tell you they want parents involved, but once
Yes.
you get involved,
Oh yeah.
they go, oh no, we're just kidding. Because
That's right.
you're not the kind of parent we want involved. We want
right.
this parent involved who's going to go along with us. We don't want
Yes.
you involved it's a no-win. You
That's
want me
right.
involved or you do not want me involved. I don't really care if you want me involved. I am involved because, again, I'm the mom.
Yeah.
I'm the mom. God didn't give you my child. God gave me that child. That's my responsibility. And I'm not going to stand before him one day and say, well, I mean, I let the school because they told me. Because he's going to go, what? Are you kidding me, Cindy? I can't do that.
No.
God gave that child to me to protect, not you to do.
Yeah.
And so the irony of the school, they want you constantly involved, but only if you are going to go along with their agenda and the way that they want
Or it's a
things done.
fundraiser.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
It was a fundraiser or anything else like
That's
that.
100% true.
So yeah. So I take a lot of issue. And if we just took all of that out of these schools and went back to the way school was when probably you and I were in school, when my parents were in school.
I mean, my mom was in the PTA.
Yeah, me
She was a
too.
room mother at every one of our things.
Yes.
She would come and read to us.
Yeah.
So the teacher could go off and have a break, an extended break or whatever.
Yeah.
And the teachers would come and visit our houses every year. This was grade school.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but it was a supportive relationship, and everybody knew their place.
Yes.
And they respected one another highly.
Yes.
Even though I did have a few little things, I had a male teacher who decked me once in 6th grade.
Oh my goodness.
Now, he thought I was laughing at him, and I wasn't. We were all standing in line for something. He literally knocked me out.
Oh my
I never
gosh.
told my mom. I never told. Back in the
Yeah.
days, you just and I think that is the same way. You don't tell your parents when stuff like this happens
Right.
because you're afraid you're going to get in trouble or whatever. So, but. It was, in general, much different than it is today, where they feel that they have authority over you as a parent.
Yeah.
And it's completely upside down to how God has ordered the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So fight for your child. That's the
Yes.
bottom line. Fight for your child. And if you feel like you're alone, trust me, you are not. And if they reached out to our group or whatever, they would realize they are not in this battle by themselves, and they don't have to be. They don't have to be in this battle by themselves.
Yeah.
But your child is way too important to not do anything.
And may I say another thing? And this is something so many people keep things hidden. They allow the school to sweep things under the carpet. They don't speak about it because their children have been harmed or something like that. But when you allow them to keep things secret, to sweep things under the rug, to not publicize these things, you all feel as if you're the only ones going through this, when really many people are going through this. And if you would go to the press, well, I don't know about the press, but
Go to groups like Concerned Parents.
to Concerned Parents of the
Show up
Ozark.
at the board meetings, show up at the library meetings.
and scream it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Because that's how change happens.
Right.
Why do you think they control the press? Because the press wants the narrative, and the press, along with other government entities, and they are very, very intimately connected with the school system and keeping that school system the way it is. Because the press is just a propaganda arm of government, a propaganda arm of big business. So you have to go outside those typical ones and find those places like, Concerned Parents of the Ozarks or, other groups. And you have to talk.
Yeah.
You have to share.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And along that line, if we don't, we're complicit in what they're doing.
Oh, for
If
sure.
you don't speak up, and we can't do that.
That's the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Thank you, ladies, for asking me to
Well,
join you today.
this has been such a pleasure, and I'm sure this is going to be a real eye-opener for some people and a validation for others, and I hope it gets out there as you prayed today and helps people who need help.